Hey, my name is Margaret Wong, and here we are again. And thanks so much for watching and listening to us. I'm very, very fortunate today to be able to invite one of our friends, both from Cleveland and Atlanta, where bad things were happening, Mr. Ray Hom. Mr. Hom, how are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning. Thank you for
Good
having me.
morning. And I'm so proud to have you here because I was really worried that you didn't want to join us. And the reason is that, and you need to introduce yourself further, but I just want to give a little bit of a flavor to our audience about who you are. Mr. Hom is born and raised in New York City. And he'll tell you how old he is, because even in our Chinese community, depends on our age when you came to America. His parents came, so he's very much like what I say, maybe a lemon or egg or something, but he's born here. But he looks so Chinese, and also he just came back 3 years ago from Singapore. Those of you who are from Asia knows that Singapore and China are the two big economies now. Actually, Taiwan is another big economy. And the fact that he came back, he's born as an ABC, American-born Chinese. He left the country, but he also lived on the east side of Cleveland. He went to school in Beechwood. My children went to school in Shaker. So we're like 10 minutes from each other. So I felt our backgrounds very close, but he's one generation behind me because he's younger, because I'm 70 and I came in 69. I would love to hear Mr. Hom's experience of his parents who came, and the older generation parents are more from Taisan. My mother-in-law is from Taisan, and my mother-in-law's family also came from the railroad. So we have very similar experiences. And another gentleman called John Mock, who used to run the Cleveland airport when the mayor, Jane Campbell, was here. We recruited him also from Hong Kong, who's also born in New York, Chinatown, who's also an ABC. So Mr. Hom, can you introduce yourself to me and to our audiences, please?
Sure. Again, my name is Ray Hom, and I actually was born in New York, but my family moved back to Cleveland. So I really grew up in Cleveland all my younger days. So I went to Beechwood High School, as we mentioned, and then graduated from Howe State University, and then moved onwards because I was tired of the cold and the snow. So over the years, I had the opportunity to actually move to Singapore. That was about 18, 19 years ago. Had the opportunity to move there. Was only supposed to spend 3 years there and ended up spending 16 years there. And it was an amazing experience for me being an ABC or Asian American, because growing up on the east side of Cleveland, I really didn't have any Asian friends at all. So you can probably relate to that a little bit, Margaret, right? So, and then moving to Atlanta after college, I didn't have any Asian friends down in the South either in Atlanta. So moving to Singapore really kind of opened my eyes to the whole Asian society and Asian culture. And it was amazing to actually go back there and be in the majority and to feel like you were in the majority. It just brought my Asianness back in, I guess, as to who I am and the culture and everything. And so, fast forward 3 years ago when I moved back and spent more time with my family, they're like, "You're more Chinese than I am now." So it's been really interesting. And Margaret, I didn't know that you actually, were in Shaker. I think, did you go to Shaker High School or no?
No, I'm actually born and raised in Hong Kong. I'm more your mother's generation. I will be 71 years old. That's why I asked you for your family, because I vaguely remember knowing your parents. Yes. And also I vaguely remember there's maybe one or two Chinese. You probably know Jimmy Chin. We are the really first, that's right, generation of Chinese.
Everybody knows everybody in Cleveland. Yeah,
that's right. It's such a small community.
My mom's actually about 10, 15 years older than you. So you're in between us.
Yeah. So tell me, so Singapore is really not China. Singapore is very prosperous, with Lee Kuan Yew and the son now. And also, even though people see Singapore as Southern Asian Pacific, but it's really not. It's very much Malaysian, Indonesian, and of course, I mean, look at them. I mean, I'm so proud of Singapore because from nothing they raised from the ashes. Because in the olden days, it's more Indonesia, Malaysia with the kings and the queens, and then Singapore come up, and then China came up. So tell me about your experience in Singapore and what made you more Asian, and how do you feel about this anti-China hate? Does it involve Singapore and stuff like that? Please.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of it relates back to the politics, right? So, but I'll give you my experience in Singapore. Just moving out there, as you said, I was more known as a banana, right? So I was yellow on the outside, but more white on the inside. And part of that reason is because I don't speak Mandarin, right? So in a way, I moved there, and I was sometimes viewed as an outsider. The good thing is that I actually met locals, and I actually became friends with mostly locals. So my experience became more more localized than many other expats that actually went out to Singapore, which is a great thing. Love my experience there, and I said I was only supposed to be there for 3 years. I ended up being out there for 16 years. And what that allowed me to do is actually cross the entire region, all through Asia Pacific, and allowed me to understand all the different cultures from Thailand to Malaysia to China to Japan, etc. And one thing that people need to understand is that even though we're lumped into one group, Asian Americans or Asian in the US and abroad, we are so different in so many capacities. So it's very difficult, to lump us all together and to communicate, because obviously we all speak different languages. So when there's any outreach or any activities like that need to be done, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are different, nationalities and different languages being spoken, and we have to cover our bases as much as possible. And that's one of the things that I actually learned, coming back to the US, is what can we do better as an Asian community to help each other and to prosper.
Yeah, and what do you think of the discrepancies in our economic level? Because there's some of us, especially ones who are more the older immigrants, they've always saved and saved. We save gift bags. I'm looking at all the gift bags in my rooms. I'm like, Margaret, just throw them out. But we just save everything. We're more hoarders. And the young ones say, oh, mom, and then they spend so much. I'm like, how hard we work, Chinese kids have no food. Of course, that's changing. China is so wealthy now. So what do you think about all that? How do you teach your nieces and nephews and your family?
So the one thing that I try to instill in the younger generation and, my family members, my cousins and their kids is to get engaged, right? And like, for instance, this past March that we had, the March and Rally, I was hoping that everybody would get out there and show up in numbers and have a voice, and really to really learn from others, because there's plenty of folks out there now that can mentor the younger generation and how to have a voice in society. And I think it's very important to either represent or be represented. And so it's very important for us to get into the political process. I've been a political activist for a very long time now. So understanding that system, it's so important for our community to be out there and to have a voice. So yeah, so I think that's one thing that's quite different. The second thing also is, I was never really taught to give back to society, because as you mentioned, our parents, they came over and they were immigrants and they worked hard. They worked for our education, etc., food on the table, etc. So there wasn't any opportunity to, for my family to give back, my parents to give back. But, I've learned over the years. And so what I would like to say is, for this next generation, giving back to the community, either it's monetary or it's time or whatever, it's so important for the next generation. And that's what I've done. And hopefully that's the legacy we'll leave.
That's right. And also, a lot of times, especially now that I'm older, I look back and I say, I'm just so happy to be in America. My visa was denied 3 times. Of course, you didn't have to go through it because you're born here. And I love your accent, by the way, because from someone's accent, you can tell when they came to America. Are they born here? Even though they look Chinese? Because that reminds me, about 2-3 years ago, I was in a wedding. And a guy just looks very much like you, like me. We're not that country Chinese, you know how those country Chinese with the ugly hair. I mean, I hate that. People. I know, I sound like a racist, but he looks very handsome actually. So
Right.
and then some, how Chinese people, we just love to talk to Chinese people and show off. So I saw him and he saw me, so we walked towards each other. His wife is there, and of course my husband passed, so I was alone. So immediately he come on and speak to me like in English. I'm like, I'm Chinese, So with the Chinese, we like to show we are Chinese. So the first thing he said is, "Oh, I'm from Hong Kong. I'm from St. Stephen's." So the first thing I said is, "I'm also from Hong Kong. I'm from St. Paul's Convent." Because in those days,
Yeah.
we look at the school, St. Stephen's, St. Paul's Convent. These are all private Catholic, Roman Catholic, not Orthodox Catholic schools.
Yeah.
Do you feel that? Do you feel as Chinese, we sort of like to, we don't one up each other because we're very humble, but we always look at them and say, "Hey, is he darker skin or she?" Because we compete as a woman. Oh,
Right.
the whiter skin is better. No wrinkles are better. If the husband is rich, it's better. Do you feel that in the Far East in Singapore and here now, or you think the world is changing even among us Chinese?
Yeah, so I think I think the world is changing. First of all, so the time that I spent in Singapore, as I mentioned, most of my friends were locals there, local Singaporeans, or they had come over from Malaysia, etc. And so the folks that I was friends with, we went to the beach. We laid out in the sun and went swimming and got had a tan and played sports or whatever. So back in the old days, in America, my mom would say, "Oh, why are you getting so dark?"
That's right. You don't want to be dark. Yeah. No
Whatever.
good. Nobody would marry you. Yes, yes. And you don't want their children, because it's
Right.
it reminds me of Prince Harry, I mean, it's like, that's what people talk about. Yeah.
So it's
Sorry. Yeah.
No, that's right. So it's changed over the years, and society changes along, and the next generation is moving and grooving in Singapore. It's pretty amazing. But getting back to your accent comment, what was interesting to me when I first moved out there is some of my friends had studied over abroad, in the UK or in Australia. So they had come back to Singapore with accents, and actually the accent in Singapore, I guess when they teach it in school, is more of the Australian and UK accent. But I did find a few American accents of my friends that were of Chinese descent. So it was kind of fun.
Yep. But you remind me typically of an American-born Chinese who loves or thinks they still like Teresa Tan, the singer, all these older ones who died or whatever, and we just love them. So that's very nice. That's why I'm so glad you accepted our invitation to come join us, because I don't want our audience just think, "Oh, that's another Chinese. Oh, that's another rah-rah anti-Asian hate. That's another Wuhan virus or China virus." Even with us, Singapore is really not China, even though it is part of Asia, but Singapore is like very, like all the rich Indians go there, or the rich Hong Kongese go there. Only the smartest get to go there. And the nice thing about Singapore is that, and I'm sure you encounter those parents, those kids, they'll come as a J1 visa, and they go to Harvard, the Yales, the Browns, and but they do go back and serve the country for 5 years. That's a guarantee. So every year, like China sends them for Confucius class, Confucius teachers. They also come on a J1, but they teach Chinese and they're required to go back. But Singapore does one better, which is to send the university kids from the best schools to American best schools and make them go back and serve in their government position to make Singapore great. They're learning from America's best. And I think that's just an awesome, experience, right?
Yep. Really. Yep. And the one thing that I did learn from my friends in Singapore is the ones that did study in the U.S., they actually shared with me so many experiences of, anti-racism, anti-Asian racism. And, it really opened my eyes to the Asian community in the U.S., looking back and reflecting back, because I used to wonder why are all the college kids, Asian college kids all hanging together? You understand that because, as I mentioned, living in Atlanta and going to school, I just kind of integrated with everybody else and didn't really have any Asian friends. So they actually, enlightened me on their experiences and what they actually experienced. So that brought a lot to light. Yeah.
So how do you recommend that, as you're not as old as I am, but as people like us who have been around, we know both the Western culture, we also know the Eastern culture, we also have traveled a lot. How do we educate the American media, the American public about all the differences, not just the hate or the love or the, because, and not just going out and marry a Chinese woman or a Filipino woman and getting them a visa and then say, oh, you're supposed to listen to me. I'm going to get you deported or something like that.
Well, I think what we need to do is get our community to amplify our voices however possible. And there's a lot of different ways that folks can do that, just by talking to friends, your family, your colleagues, anybody that you interact with, and really, share your experiences and share the Asian history of America, and let them know that this model of minority myth is not what it's supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think the racism comes about because of fear and probably resentment. So I'll give you an example of resentment. So there was a high school, and the graduation was coming up, and if you looked at the list of all the honor students, the majority were Asian American. You can tell by the last names, by the surnames, and that can cause resentment at the end of the day, right? So how do you make that understanding more impactful to folks? And so I think just building bridges, having allies, wherever you're working, wherever you're volunteering, etc. Again, be represented or represent if you can. I actually received an email from a friend where he said that his child just in high school started the Asian student organization because of this, to bring awareness, which is amazing because it's heartwarming to see that people of all ages are getting engaged now. I think that's another great example of what people can do at any time in any point in their life to get involved.
I totally agree. And people need to know that also, like people like us from Hong Kong, or people, and a lot of these older generational Chinese who are born here, a lot of them are from Taisan, because Taisan people, they suffered so much because, of course, in Chinese history, with the, opium addiction with the British, and then we have in Shanghai, we have bad, the outside borders. Maybe you may want to read Shanghai Girls, and so this Asian thing really it's interesting. Good. So my time is up. Do you have some concluding thoughts for us, Mr. Hom?
So I think the only thing that I would like to tell folks is I think it's really important for all of us to, if you witness incidents, anti-hate incident, don't just walk away, right? If you're a bystander, there's ways to help the victim. And one of those ways is, you can go online, and there's an organization called iHolaback.org. And it has a bystander intervention guide that explains what the 5 Ds are, which is distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. And there's examples of how you can do that to help someone that may be in need. And it's really important because, for the seniors and for the Asian woman, it's really important for us to just be on the lookout for situations that we can potentially intercept. So really important. And again, get on social media, amplify your voice, sign up on the Stop Racism Against Asian Americans, 1 million strong. It continues to grow on Facebook. And it records incidents and informs you about what's happening out there on the 2 coasts, because the East and West Coast is really where a lot of these incidents are happening. So fortunately, not as many in Cleveland, but we do hear about these minor incidents, and thank goodness they haven't become major incidents. So we need to look out for each other and improve the safety situation for everybody.
Thank you again for accepting our invitation, Mr. Ray Hom. And we'll let you know his contact information later. So if you have any information directly that you need from him, he's just an awesome consultant, an awesome person who knows. And also because he's American born, he really understands our culture, the American culture, and it's very nice. And thank you. Thank you for following us and listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Bye.